Well, hello everyone. I promised to record a video for you because we didn't have time in class to go over everything I planned to go over. Even though we now have an hour and a half class and last semester had only 1 hour class, we still don't have time. But that's okay because I'm here to create videos for you and keep you up to speed. All right, so in week 2, there is a file that was not published because I meant to go over it in class, but you can certainly go back to week 2. Week 3 right now is published also, and you can go back to week 2, which is not published, and click on this and go over this. But let us do this together really fast. So this one video, I want to talk about the basic story steps. Then I'll create another video when I'll talk about the 3-act structure, just as a recap for those of you who are not exactly clear on what a 3-act structure is and what happens at the end of each act. So let's go here. So these 7 basic story steps are based on John Truby's The Anatomy of Story. Now, John Truby is a friend of mine. I mean, I should say acquaintance, not a friend, but I used to work for him and we're friendly, and he actually spoke to one of my advanced script analysis classes. He's got a really great book called The Anatomy of Story, as I said, but his approach is slightly different. That's why I wanted him to speak to my class at that time, because he does not believe in 3 acts. He believes 3 acts are confusing and also misleading. He believes in 22 building blocks. To be honest with you, it's the difference is minor. So if you can apply the 3-act structure to his 22 building blocks, it'll work just fine. So this is just his thing. Although he's very smart and very good, this is a marketing ploy, I think. Although he may not think that. So anyway, weakness, but this is really important. Weakness and need. Each character, you can go over all of the details here, but I can tell you quickly that each character has to have a weakness, which is a flaw, some call it, right? And they have to have a need. Now, Sid Field calls it dramatic need. So Sid Field confuses a couple of things, I think. For him, dramatic need is both the need on the under the surface and the desire on the surface. Truby separates them. Truby actually differentiates between them. So the need is something the character, your main character, that is, not every character. Your villain doesn't need to have that. The villain doesn't really change. We'll talk about that next week. But your main character, in order for the main character to change, the main character has to have a need. The need that they are not aware of. Okay, this is important because if they're aware of the need, they choose not to change, or they've already changed. There's no story. So the need has to be under the surface, subconscious, under the hood. Okay? Now, the character has to have a problem also. And that problem is manifests itself by the character's flaw, plus the inciting incident or the inciting event or the catalyst, whatever you want to call it, that actually starts the story. Right? So, if I am sitting here, I mean, I'm sure you all know that, but if I'm sitting here contemplating the problems of my life and all of a sudden, a bird falls from the sky and, falls on my head. And all of a sudden, I now am, deciding to kill all the birds or something like that. It's just a stupid example, but this is what the catalyst or inciting incident is. It has to come from the outside. We talked about it in class, not from the inside, because if it's from the inside, it cannot rouse the main character into a new way of thinking or send them on a journey. It has to come from the outside. It has to shake their foundation, okay, from the outside. It can be, in Collateral, Tom Cruise gets into Jamie Foxx's cab Jamie Foxx is a very indecisive guy, very nice, very sweet, very unassertive guy, gentle, and he gets this killer in his car. And that's exactly what he needs in order for him to actually come to terms with the world and how to change. Okay, so then we have the desire. Now, the desire and the need are important to understand. The desire is on the surface. The desire for Jamie Foxx's character, Max, is to actually lose Tom Cruise, get the hell out of there at all costs, no matter what. His desire slightly changes towards the end, or it bends because he needs to save Annie in the end, right? But throughout the entire movie, his only desire is to lose Tom Cruise, get out of there. Okay? Now his need, which he becomes later aware of, or maybe not, but we're aware of it, is that he needs to become more assertive, that he needs to sort of stop being so timid and stop facing life. Sometimes it's painful, but we have to stand up for certain things. And that's what he needs to learn, but doesn't yet know in the beginning. Okay, so when you think about your characters, think that. All right? Then we have to have the opponent. That's crucial. The opponent, even if the main opponent is a corporation or institution, the way Caitlin has it, somebody has to represent that institution. Okay? It's in a form of this person, this asshole professor, okay, or whoever. Now, the opponent does not have to be evil. The opponent does not need to be a villain. The opponent is just simply a person who has different interests from your main character, and they clash. Or someone who's competing for the same thing that your main character is competing. That's all. So the opponent can be your mother, or the character's mother, or the relative, or a friend. In fact, the closer the opponent to your main character, the more they know each other, the more interesting the relationship for that character will be with the opponent, because they have a shorthand of some sort. It's not a stranger who doesn't know your main character. It's someone who actually can hurt them because they know them so well. Hurt them, metaphorically and sometimes physically, literally. Okay, so the opponent is important. We talked about it in class. Then there's got to be a plan. So once the character goes on a journey, that's at the end of Act 1, which we'll talk about in the next video, there's got to be a plan. Now, that plan does not have to come to fruition. That plan doesn't have to sort of complete itself or have a closure to it, but there's got to be a plan. So if you go to get in the car, start driving, there's no plan, just whatever. You drive anywhere, right? But if you have a plan, you want to go from New York to Albany, for example, New York City, or I don't know, from New York City to LA, many things can happen on the way, right? But the plan is to get to LA. That's important. So that desire is sort of tied into the plan. Okay? Then you got to have the battle. Just basic 7 steps. The battle, of course, is the final battle, what's known as the showdown or climax, and it has to happen between the opponent, whoever represents the forces of opposition, and the main character. The main character cannot have a battle with a friend or an ally or someone who is not important to the story. The whole point of the story is to have that battle. And as we talked about in class, the opponent is just the other side of the main character that they're not aware of. Okay? So the battle is with themselves. And when the character, obviously it has to be externalized and not be so on the nose about it. Oh, you should know that it's the other side of the character because you're creating these characters. But the people in the audience, some who are some who are discerning, and some who are, really great moviegoers and understand story, they'll understand all that. But most people don't. They just go to see a great story and have fun. That's all. And that's your job, is to make it for them. All right. So the battle is important. That's when the main character, realizes who they really are in the final battle with the opponent. So in Rocky, you got to have that battle with Apollo Creed, right? At that boxing match. In The Matrix, Neo has to find the bad guys, those government workers, these government gadgets representatives, right? And so on and so on. Now, finally, or not finally, actually, one more, self-revelation, according to Truby. Now, self-revelation is what the character understands about themselves that they didn't know in the beginning. We talked about it many times in individual sessions with you in class, that's your journey. The journey of the character, the theme of the movie, is what the character finally understands in the end. That's the moral of the story. I don't like the word moral because then it becomes something that biblical, almost. So, finally, and this doesn't have to happen for every movie, but there's some movies have it, a lot of movies have it actually, it's the new equilibrium, how the character behaves in the real world after they have gone through the journey, had the self-revelation, what exactly is different in the real. My friend Emax Fry, who wrote Something Wild, just knew that intuitively. So after I forget his name now. Oh man, I'm getting old. Anyway, the main characters in the film, goes on the journey. Again, goes through the same similar process that Max in Collateral goes. Sort of like becomes tougher, more assertive, more open and to life and to dangerous experiences. In the end, he quits his job because he cannot really do his job anymore. Now, that may be a little too simplistic for a serious film, so the character doesn't really have to make major changes. But the new equilibrium has to be at least clear on the horizon. Okay? So that's that. So definitely go through these. And I also suggest that you invest in Anatomy of Story, which is a pretty good book. Okay? If you have any questions, let me know. The next video is about the 3-act structure. Okay.